Once upon a time, in a peaceful village surrounded by a lush forest, lived a kind-hearted girl known as Little Red Riding Hood. She earned her name because of the bright red hooded cloak her grandmother had sewn for her, which she wore every day. One sunny morning, her mother called her and said, "Little Red Riding Hood, your grandmother is feeling unwell. I have prepared a basket of bread, honey, and fruit for her. Please take it to her cottage, but remember, stay on the path and don't talk to strangers." "Don't worry, Mother. I will be careful," promised Little Red Riding Hood. She picked up the basket and skipped happily into the forest. As she walked, she admired the colorful flowers and the chirping birds. Suddenly, a sly wolf appeared from behind a tree. He smiled cunningly and said, "Good morning, little girl. Where are you going on this fine day?" Remembering her mother's advice, Little Red Riding Hood hesitated, but then thought, "He seems friendly." She replied, "I'm going to my grandmother's cottage to take her some food." The wolf's eyes glinted. He asked, "Where does your grandmother live?" "In the little cottage by the big oak tree at the end of the forest," she said innocently. The wolf grinned, thinking of his wicked plan. "What lovely flowers around you. Why don't you pick some for your grandmother? She will surely love them," he suggested. Little Red Riding Hood thought it was a kind idea. While she picked flowers, the wolf quickly ran ahead to the grandmother's cottage. When he arrived, he knocked on the door. "Who is it?" asked the grandmother. "It's me, Little Red Riding Hood," the wolf said in a sweet voice. The grandmother, realizing something was wrong, tried to escape, but the wolf locked her in a cupboard. He then put on her clothes and glasses, climbed into her bed, and waited for Little Red Riding Hood. Soon, Little Red Riding Hood arrived at the cottage. She noticed something strange about her grandmother. "Grandmother, what big ears you have," she exclaimed. "All the better to hear you with, my dear," said the wolf. "Grandmother, what big eyes you have. All the better to see you with, my dear." "Grandmother, what big teeth you have. All the better to eat you with," roared the wolf, leaping out of the bed. Little Red Riding Hood screamed and ran, but just then, a woodcutter passing by heard her cries. He rushed into the cottage, chased the wolf away, and freed the grandmother from the cupboard. The grandmother hugged Little Red Riding Hood tightly and said, "Thank you for coming, my dear, but always remember to stay cautious and never trust strangers." Little Red Riding Hood nodded and said, "I've learned my lesson. I will always listen to your advice and mother's." From that day on, Little Red Riding Hood was more careful and always stayed on the path. Moral of the story: always listen to the advice of your elders and be cautious of strangers, no matter how kind they seem.